Welcome to Real True Crime. Today, we delve into a tragic story of love, obsession, and murder in the small town of Tifton, Georgia. The following story is one of dark secrets, emotional turmoil, and a brutal murder that left an indelible mark on everyone involved. This is the case of a respected man whose life ended in a nightmarish way at the hands of an unexpected killer, leaving questions that would haunt the town forever. Willie Tanner, 49, was a well-known and respected figure in the small southern town of Tifton. He owned Tanner's Hardware, a local hardware store that had been serving the community for over 2 decades. Known for his friendly service and wide selection of tools and supplies, Tanner's Hardware was the kind of place where neighbors could find what they needed, whether it was a simple screwdriver or advice on how to fix a leaky faucet. Willie was often seen behind a counter, greeting customers with a warm smile and chatting about various topics. Willie's life seemed ideal to those who knew him. He was married to Lynn Tanner, 48, his high school sweetheart, and the couple was often involved in local church activities and charity events. However, beneath this seemingly perfect exterior, Willie was hiding a dark secret. Despite his reputation as a devoted husband, he had started a secret relationship with Madison Kelly, an 18-year-old high school senior. Madison, known for her striking looks and intelligence, was a regular customer at the hardware store. Over time, a friendship developed, which soon turned into a sexual relationship. Torn between guilt and desire, Willie struggled with his conscience as the holiday season approached. He knew the relationship was wrong, but he couldn't free himself from the emotional entanglement that had developed. The relationship was fiery and extremely intense, with Willie torn between his guilt and his growing attachment to Madison. In the days leading up to his death, Willie appeared distant and distracted, trying to maintain the facade of a loving husband while battling his inner turmoil. As Christmas approached in December 2019, Willie's behavior began to change. He spent less time at home and more time working late. Lynn noticed the change, but attributed it to the stress of running the business during the busy holiday season. Friends and neighbors also noticed that Willie seemed worried, no longer as cheerful as before, but no one could have imagined the storm brewing beneath the surface, a storm that would soon shatter the peace of their small town. It was the morning of December 22nd, 2019, just days before Christmas. Tifton was quiet, with most residents finishing their Christmas shopping or decorating their homes. Around 9 a.m., Lynn Tanner's returned home after the Sunday service at First Baptist Church, where she had volunteered to help prepare for the Christmas Eve service. She noticed Willie's truck parked in the driveway, which seemed odd since he had mentioned needing to pick up some last-minute supplies for the store. When Lynn, 20, entered their home on Bride Street, the first thing she noticed was the fresh pine scent from the Christmas tree they had decorated together. The tree was still lit with colorful lights, and beneath it were carefully wrapped gifts, some with her name on them. But something was wrong. The house was eerily silent, and Willie did not respond when she called for him. Upon entering the living room, Lynn encountered a scene that would haunt her forever. Willie's lifeless body lay on the floor, and the floor near the Christmas tree, surrounded by broken ornaments and tinsel. His head was soaked in blood, as if it were a mangled enchilada, and a hammer lay nearby, covered with what she could only assume was her husband's blood. Lynn fell to her knees, her body trembling as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. Panic overtook her, but she forced herself to stay calm long enough to call 911. Her voice shook as she explained the situation to the operator, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, my husband isn't breathing. There's blood everywhere," she cried. The operator tried to keep her calm, instructing her not to touch anything and to wait outside for the police and paramedics to arrive. Within minutes, the quiet street was filled with the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, murmuring among themselves and speculating about what had happened. Lynn sat on the front porch, dazed and in shock, unable to grasp how her life had changed in an instant. The Tifton Police Department arrived on the scene minutes after Lynn's 911 call. Leading the investigation was Detective Nora Collins, a veteran officer with over 15 years of experience, known for her sharp intuition and methodical approach. Detective Collins was respected by her colleagues and feared by criminals. As she stepped out of her unmarked car, she was immediately struck by the contrast between the festive decorations on the Tanner's house and the grim scene that awaited her inside. The living room was a disturbing mix of Christmas cheer and brutal violence. The Christmas lights flickered on the tree, reflecting off the broken ornaments scattered on the floor. The body lay near the base of the tree, his head crushed, apparently by multiple blows with a hammer. Blood had splattered onto the nearby ornaments, soaking the wrapping paper and ribbons. Detective Collins observed the scene, her mind working quickly as she began piecing together what might have happened. The hammer lying next to Willie's body was immediately collected as evidence. The crime scene was bloody, but also oddly contained. There were no signs of a struggle beyond the immediate area around the tree. It was as if Willie had been completely caught off guard. The forensic team arrived shortly after, led by Dr. Philip Wong, a meticulous and detail-oriented medical examiner known for his precise work. Dr. Wong began examining Willie's body, noting the severe head trauma, which likely caused an instant death. He estimated the time of death to be between 10 p.m. and midnight the previous night, based on the state of rigor mortis. Detective Collins ordered her team to collect all possible evidence. They took fingerprints, photographs, and searched for any other clues that might point to the killer. They also interviewed Willie Tanner, who was still in shock, but managed to provide a basic timeline of her morning and Willie's activities the previous day. As the investigation progressed, Detective Collins couldn't shake the feeling that Willie was a victim of a crime of passion. The brutality of the attack suggested deep anger or jealousy, emotions that often fuel such violent outbursts. But who could have hated Willie Tanner so much to kill him in such a brutal way? That was the question Collins was determined to answer. The first person Detective Nora Collins decided to investigate was Madison Kelly, the 18-year-old high school senior who had also been Willie Tanner's secret lover. She was involved in several extracurricular activities, including the school drama club, where she had recently impressed audiences by playing Tiny Tim in a local production of A Christmas Carol. But beneath her polished exterior, Madison was emotionally fragile, a trait that had become more evident in recent months. Madison lived with her mother, Tammy Kelly, in a small but tidy house on the outskirts of town. The Kellys were known for being private, and Tammy was known in the community for being controlling and obsessed with her daughter's appearance, especially after Madison's father came out as gay and left the family. When Detective Collins arrived at the Kelly residence on the afternoon of December 22nd, she found Madison still in her pajamas, in her room, visibly affected by the news of Willie's death. The room was a typical teenage sanctuary, with posters of pop stars like Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande, but there were also signs of Madison's obsession with Willie. Detective Collins noticed a framed photo of Willie shirtless on Madison's nightstand, and her memories were filled with graphic entries about their sexual relationship. During the interview, Madison initially cooperated but quickly became emotional when questioned about her relationship with Willie. She admitted to the affair, describing how they had grown close over the past year. Madison revealed that she had fallen deeply in love with Willie and had even fantasized about a future together. However, as Christmas approached, Willie had distanced himself. Love with Willie. She feared he was planning to end the relationship. When Detective Collins pressed Madison about her whereabouts on the night of the murder, Madison hesitated before claiming she had been home alone studying for her final exams. Her alibi was weak, and her emotional state raised red flags for Collins. Madison's tears and trembling hands indicated she was under immense stress, but it wasn't clear whether it was from guilt or grief. As the interview continued, Madison's behavior shifted from grieving to defensive. She insisted she had nothing to do with Willie's death and began speaking erratically, blaming a mysterious man she called Bob for influencing her actions. Madison claimed that Bob had convinced her to maintain a sexual relationship with Willie, or else he would torture her. But when Detective Collins asked for more details, Madison became evasive and confused. Detective Collins wasn't convinced by Madison's story. The combination of her emotional instability, her obsession with Willie, and her weak alibi made her a prime suspect. However, Collins knew she needed more concrete evidence before making an arrest. The investigation into Madison Kelly was far from over, and Collins was determined to uncover the truth behind Willie Tanner's tragic death. The second person on Detective Nora Collins' list was Lynn Tanners, Willie's wife of 25. Lynn was a well-known figure in Tifton, recognized for her deep involvement in the community and church activities. She was a warm and friendly woman, always greeting neighbors with a smile and often hosting gatherings at her home. Despite the outward appearance of a happy marriage, Detective Collins knew that Lynn had harbored suspicions about Willie's fidelity for quite some time. Lynn had spent the days leading up to the murder preparing for Christmas. She was busy with church events, including the upcoming Christmas Eve service at First Baptist Church. To the outside world, it seemed like Lynn was focused on her faith and family, but inside, she was worried by a growing sense of unease. She had noticed Willie's increasing absences, which he often explained as work-related or part of his commitment to the church. However, Lynn couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When Detective Collins interviewed Lynn on December 22nd, Lynn was still in shock from discovering her husband's body that morning. Sitting at the kitchen table, Lynn recounted her marriage to Willie, describing him as a loving husband, but also admitting that they had grown distant and that their relationship had lost its intimacy in recent years, especially after their son, Rifle, went off to college. She confessed that she had suspected Willie was having an affair after he repeatedly rejected her request for intimacy, but she had no proof. Lynn's eyes filled with tears as she spoke about the strain this had put on their relationship, particularly in the last few months. Detective Collins asked Lynn about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. Lynn claimed that she had been at home preparing for the next day's church service. She had gone to bed early, assuming Willie would join her later. But when she woke up in the middle of the night and realized he wasn't there, she thought he had fallen asleep in the living room. It wasn't until the next morning that she discovered the horrifying truth. Lynn's account of the night was straightforward, but Detective Collins couldn't ignore the possibility that Lynn's suspicions about Willie's infidelity might have driven her to commit murder. The brutality of the crime suggested a deeply personal motive, and as Willie's wife, Lynn had both the opportunity and a potential reason to kill him. However, Lynn's grief seemed genuine, and her cooperation with the investigation was unwavering. She answered all of Collins' questions without hesitation, and even provided access to Willie's personal belongings, including his phone and computer. Still, Collins knew that emotions could be powerful motivators, and she wasn't ready to rule Lynn out as a suspect just yet. The investigation continued, with Collins keeping a close eye on the murder. Lynn's story was a very detailed one, and the third name on Detective Collins' list was Tammy Kelly, Madison Kelly's mother, a woman with a strong and controlling personality. Tammy was known in Tifton as a perfectionist, always concerned with appearances and maintaining a strictly orderly home, especially after her husband left her when he came out as gay. She was active in the community, often organizing events at the local church, but her primary concern was her daughter, Madison. The relationship between Tammy and Madison had always been tense. Madison, young, beautiful, and full of sexual potential, had been the object of Tammy's obsessive fear. Tammy's control over Madison extended to every aspect of her life, from the clothes she wore to her social interactions. It was well known among neighbors that Tammy had very high expectations for her daughter and that she was a very high-spirited person and was often harsh when those expectations were not met. There were even rumors that Tammy disciplined Madison severely, with one particularly disturbing story claiming that Tammy would spank Madison whenever she thought her daughter was attracting too much attention from the men in the community. Detective Collins approached Tammy on December 23rd, the day after Willie Tanner's body was found. Tammy was at home, seemingly unperturbed by she welcomed Collins into her immaculate living room, decorated with traditional Christmas ornaments, including a perfectly adorned tree and a nativity scene. Tammy was calm and composed as she spoke, but there was an underlying tension in her demeanor. Collins began the interview by asking Tammy about her relationship with Willie. Tammy was quick to praise Willie, describing him in a distant manner as a good man and a pillar of the community. However, when the conversation shifted to Madison, Tammy's tone became more cautious. She admitted that she had been upset with Madison's recent behavior, noting that her daughter had started wearing makeup and a bra in the weeks leading up to the murder. When Collins pressed Tammy on whether she knew about Madison's sexual relationship with Willie, something she had been trying to avoid, Tammy's composure faltered slightly. She denied knowing about the relationship, but admitted that she had noticed Madison had begun dressing like a prostitute, in her words. Tammy claimed that she had tried to talk to Madison about it, but her daughter had ignored her, insisting that everything was fine. Collins couldn't ignore the possibility that Tammy's jealousy and need for control might have driven her to commit the murder. Tammy's intense need to control her daughter, combined with the potential scandal of Madison's sexual relationship with a much older man, could have been her worst nightmare. This, however, Tammy remained cold and calm throughout the interview, showing little sign of guilt or remorse. She was polite and cooperative, but offered little useful information. As Collins left the Kelly home, she knew she couldn't rule Tammy out as a suspect. The investigation was becoming more complex, with each suspect revealing new layers of potential motives and secrets, but without concrete evidence. Collins was still piecing together the puzzle. On December 24th, 2019, just a day before Christmas, the investigation took a significant turn. It was a cold, gray morning in Tifton, Georgia, with temperatures hovering around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Detective Nora Collins and her team returned to the Tanner residence, meticulously re-examining every corner of the crime scene, determined to find any clues they might have missed. As the team combed through the house, an officer noticed something strange near the fireplace. Among the carefully wrapped Christmas gifts, he found a small torn piece of paper, partially hidden under the rug. The paper appeared to be a handwritten note, but only a fragment was legible. It read, "Dirty boy, meet me at," followed by a time, 10 p.m., and the initials MK. The discovery immediately caught Detective Collins' attention. The initials MK seemed to match those of Madison Kelly, Willie's secret lover. The time mentioned in the note also matched the estimated time of Willie's death. Collins realized that this could be the key piece of evidence linking Madison directly to the crime scene. On the night of Collins, quickly ordered a forensic analysis of the note, hoping to determine if the handwriting matched Madison's. The note was sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in Atlanta for further analysis. Meanwhile, Collins decided to return to Madison's house to search for anything that could connect her to the note or the crime. At the Kelly residence, Collins and her team found a notebook in Madison's bedroom, hidden under her mattress. The notebook was filled with disturbing entries about her obsession with Willie, including detailed descriptions of their sexual encounters. Their sexual encounters and plans to secretly meet him, one of the entries dated December 22nd, matched the time and place mentioned in the note found at the Tanner home. This new evidence was crucial. It not only placed Madison at the crime scene, but also provided a motive driven by jealousy and obsession. Collins felt the case beginning to take shape, with the pieces of the puzzle finally coming together. Back at the station, forensic analysis confirmed that the handwriting on the note matched Madison's. This was the breakthrough Collins had been waiting for with this new evidence. The investigation quickly focused on Madison Kelly, making her the prime suspect in Willie Tanner's murder. With this new breakthrough, Collins decided to interrogate Madison again. During the second interrogation, Madison attempted to change her story, claimed that Bob, an imaginary secret lover, had been manipulating her for years and that he had forced her to kill Willie. According to her elaborate version, Bob was a high-ranking politician involved in strange sexual rituals and secret satanic and Wiccan practices. Madison insisted that Bob had coerced her into living a life of sin and had eventually commanded her to murder Willie the police. However, we're not fooled by her story. Detective Nora Collins, who had been leading the investigation, saw through the lies. Despite Madison's attempts to shift the blame, the evidence was clear. The handwriting on the note found at the crime scene matched Madison's, and her obsessive diary entries painted the picture of a young woman consumed by jealousy and rage. When confronted with the evidence, Madison once again tried to alter her version of events. This time she claimed that the murder occurred after. Abismo had been that Bob was not a real person, but a voice in her head, and that she was suffering from a mental illness. She said she was not in control of her actions on the night of the murder, but the police didn't believe her. They were convinced that Madison was lying to cover up her crime. On December 26, 2019, Madison Kelly was officially arrested for the murder of Willie Tanner. She was taken into custody without incident, eerily calm as she was handcuffed and led away. The small town of Tifton was left in shock, struggling to understand how a young woman with such a promising future could commit such a heinous act. Willie's family, devastated by the loss, found some comfort in knowing that the person responsible for his death was finally behind bars. However, the pain of his absence, especially during the holiday season, was something they would carry with them forever. Madison Kelly's trial began in early February 2020. The small town of Tifton, Georgia, was captivated by the case, with many locals following every detail closely. The courtroom was packed as both the prosecution and the defense presented their cases. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Robert Whitman, an experienced attorney known for his direct approach, argued that the case was not a case of murder. The prosecution, led by the defense, argued that Madison's crime had been premeditated. Whitman, 52, described how Madison's obsession with Willie Tanner had reached a dangerous level, driving her to commit a brutal murder when he tried to end their relationship. He emphasized the cold and calculated nature of the crime, pointing to the evidence that suggested Madison had brought the hammer with the intention of using it. On the other hand, defense attorney Karen Blackwell, 45, known for her sharp but compassionate legal mind, argued that Madison had been mentally unstable at the time of the murder. Blackwell claimed that Madison had suffered a psychotic breakdown, driven by the fear of losing Willie and the intense pressure of their secret relationship. She urged the jury to consider Madison's difficult family life and the influence it had on her mental state. Blackwell painted a picture of a vulnerable young woman manipulated by an older man who ultimately crumbled under the pressure. Throughout the trial, Willie's family sat in the front row, their faces marked by grief. They listened in silence as the details of Willie's double life were exposed to the world. The pain of his betrayal was evident, but so was their deep sorrow for the loss. After several days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict on February 18, 2020. Madison Kelly was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The sentence sparked mixed reactions. Some thought it was too lenient given the brutality of the crime, while others believed it was a fair punishment, considering Madison's youth and mental disorder. Willie's family expressed relief that the trial was over, but they knew the scars of this tragedy would remain with them forever. After the trial concluded, life in Tifton, Georgia slowly began to return to normal, though the memory of the crime lingered. Willie Tanner's hardware store, once a community hub, closed its doors for good. Without Willie to run it, his family decided they couldn't carry on with the business. The closure marked the end of an era for the small town, leaving a void that would be hard to fill. Madison Kelly was transferred to a state prison, where she began serving her 25-year sentence. Despite her attempts to feign mental illness during the trial, psychiatric evaluations in prison found no evidence of schizophrenia or any other condition that could explain her actions. Madison spent her days in relative isolation with few visitors. Her once promising future was now a distant memory, replaced by the harsh reality of a life behind bars. Willie Tanner, Willie's widow, struggled to cope with the revelations about her husband's double life. Knowing that Willie had been unfaithful with an 18-year-old was a heavy burden to bear. Despite the support of her church community, Lynn withdrew from public life, choosing to grieve in private. She eventually sold the family home and moved to a nearby town, hoping to start anew, far from the memories that haunted her. Tammy Kelly, Madison's mother, faced her own challenges after the trial. The scandal had brought shame to her family, and the tight grip she once held over her daughter's life had crumbled. Tammy became a pariah in the community, and many blamed her for Madison's downfall due to her controlling nature. Tammy also withdrew from public life, avoiding the judgmental glances of her neighbors. For the residents of Tifton, the events of December 2019 served as a painful reminder that even in a closed-knit community, secrets can fester and lead to tragedy. That year's Christmas celebrations were more somber, as the memory of Willie Tanner's murder cast a shadow over the festive season. It would take years for the community to heal, and even then, the story of Madison Kelly and Willie Tanner would be remembered as one of the darkest chapters in Tifton's history. Interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. What sentence would you have given? Leave me a comment, and I'll read it. Enjoy life, because there's only one. Yours truly, the detective.